everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Sari. I was recording a video, part 2 of why it's not over yet, as far as the Chris Watts case, and breaking news came in. So I jotted down some things. My original video was going to be about theory and facts versus conspiracy, and it's still going to be about that, but I just wanted to kind of read. I'm sure you probably have already heard or read, but it broke just a little while ago. By the time I post this, it will have been hours ago, and it was reported by People magazine. So it says that Chris Watts is actually looking into ways to appeal his conviction for killing Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. And he's been obviously convicted to prison for the rest of his life. He's researching his case and reaching out to attorneys to weigh his legal options to decide whether to appeal his conviction. A source close to Watts tells People magazine that Watts is looking into his punishment and has been researching his case and other similar cases. Obviously, it would be an uphill battle for him because he pleaded guilty. You forfeit your rights to an appeal, but that's not absolute, so there is a small chance that it could work out in his favor. The source says that Watts has spoken with attorneys on the phone and doesn't have a plan for his representation. It would cost him money that he doesn't have, said the insider, but he still has ideas of exploring his options. Even if Watts retains an attorney licensed to practice in Colorado, he still has to deal with the appeal from several states away. So he's in prison in Wisconsin, so he'd have to go through them first. He understands that this would be a Hail Mary, says the insider. And this is a quote, he's smart enough to realize that it's unlikely to ever change anything, but he's sitting in prison with nothing but time. It's sinking into him that he could be in that same cell for 50 years, and now he's trying to decide whether there's any legal remedies for him. Well, I don't know if that's the case, if he's so smart. But in any case, I do agree that this is all sinking into him. So now he's trying to decide whether or not there are legal remedies for him. I just really find it very interesting that this falls on the heels of that whole Lavelle award ceremony that the Ruseks were at, Frankie and Frankie Jr., and they were holding up the big check for $200,000, which was Shanann's commission that she had earned, and they were awarding it to the Ruseks, and rightfully so. So there are videos, like I said, all over YouTube with that. And I just wonder who that pissed off. So, yeah. Word has it that he's going to try to attempt to use the Thrive products as a reason for him not being in control of his mind and his actions. So, yeah. Well, like I said, I believe he's covering for NK, and he was going to take something that was very personal to him to make him tell another story, and that's exactly what happened. You know, like I said last time, when the shine kind of wears off and that allure, and he realizes that maybe she's not pining over him, or something else that really struck a nerve with his fan club, his folks, or him. And this could have been the catalyst. So, anyway, my last video, I did say that it wasn't over. And I just wanted to make this really clear because I got a ton, people came from me big time telling me, you know, that I'm just rehashing it and, you know, I'm trying to make money. I'm not even monetized. You know, that this is not at all about what my purpose is. I just strive to keep awareness open for justice, for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, Nico, the Ruseks, and justice for all victims. That's all I'm interested in. And if there are channels that are monetized and are earning monetization for trying to keep this case open, for the same reasons, for justice to be served, well, they can do that. Is there a problem with HLN or ID Discovery, NBC or CBS or any of those other media platforms earning a profit off of it? Of course not. Off of any story. So, you know, people just need to get a grip with that. So anyway, Well, so on to what my points are. And what I'm going to do is use discovery because I want to show that my theory is not based on just conjecture and conspiracies and anything like that. This is actual stuff from excerpts from discovery. So I jotted this down so that I wouldn't ramble on because I have a tendency to do that, and I do apologize. So, all right, so we all know that law enforcement doesn't always get everything right, regardless of their best intentions, and in many cases cannot prove what they already know due to insufficient evidence. And this is why unsolved crimes remain, and innocent people are convicted and imprisoned. So I'm going to state facts directly from discovery, and you can verify them for yourselves because there's almost 2,000 pages. It's very hard to scour through and verify each claim, so I'll provide the page number of each fact. If you're interested in reading or downloading the entirety of the discovery facts, I'll provide the link to the PDF file in the description below. You can look below in the description. So the discovery is public record and can be accessed easily. I'll state my opinion about the implications of these facts and how they affect the case. And of course, it's my opinion. Some facts are not contained within the discovery file, as much would be learned months after the murders and not included in the discovery. These facts were discussed with Chris by the CBI and FBI during his interview at Dodge Correctional Facility in Wisconsin in 2019. And remember, there are roughly 200 pages of discovery and hours of audio recorded interviews that are not made public. In addition, the September 2018 interview with Nicole Kessinger, yeah, that's still not made public. And the vast majority of her retrieved text messages are not included in the discovery as well. A lot of people don't know that, but that is the fact. So it is plain to see that we don't know everything that law enforcement actually knows. And once again, I'm discussing facts and events, not in any particular order, as the discovery is gathered in a non-sequential order, and that's typical in most cases. So, and we're all familiar with the phrase, the best laid plans. Something derailed those best laid plans of Chris. I think that he had an original plan and had two unexpected glitches to upset and thwart his plans. So before getting into the discovery and the lies, I'll give you what I believe Chris initially, just at the beginning, planned with or without assistance. Of course, I think it's with assistance, but, you know, either way, this was what I believe was the plan. I don't believe that Chris Watts snapped or was in a rage, and neither does Sandy Rusak. She told Dr. Phil that obviously he wasn't. He told his coworkers the day before that he was going to go to Survey the next morning, that he had that. He even said the morning of that he knew he was going to do it. And then also there was a text that between he and Nicole Kessinger when he was in North Carolina, and said he had made up his mind he was going to be with her. He was going to be with Nicole. This was certainly premeditated. All right, so this was carried out methodically. He wanted to. It was calculated. And he wasn't able to. The problem was that he wasn't able to completely clean up and clear up the crime scene and cover his tracks. I believe he planned on disposing of Shanann's ring, watch, phone, purse, kitchen trash, which contained the bed sheet and a book that Shanann had sent to him, Hold Me Tight, which Shanann had actually mailed to him. The nitrile gloves, one on the top of the refrigerator and the other between the pillows in the master bedroom, her flip-flops, and all the clothing dumped out of those plastic storage bins, the shovel with the dirt still on the spade portion that was consistent with dirt from Survey, the broken rake handle and sheet left at the Survey site. And his plans were definitely thwarted by two factors, one being the delayed flight, and the second being Nicole Atkinson coming over that morning. He didn't expect either of those. He even called Kessinger to complain about Nicole Atkinson calling the police and said she wasn't being nice to him. And she was on the phone with Shanann's mother. This upset him. Months later, in the Dodge interview in February, he brought it up again. He brought up the fact that he was told her flight wasn't delayed, but that she and Nicole Atkinson were just talking. I believe that was discussed between Chris and Nicole Kessinger in frustration that night, as his plans were off by several hours. He went to work and was called back home by police midday around noon. I believe he originally planned on coming home in the afternoon after work to tie up all those loose ends, and then call the police either that evening or the next day. So he was going to use the excuse that Shanann was at a friend's, and he was just giving her time to cool down because she was upset, and they had argued. They had words that morning. So he used some of those excuses and things that he had planned kind of on the fly with, that duperous delight, that little smile he was giving to the news media. But yeah, there was an entire like maybe 6 hour block of time that didn't work out his way. The several hours where Shanann was late that night coming in because she had a delayed flight, and then coming home several hours early at noon. So he wasn't able to clean up all these things and handle them. All right, so on pages 330, this is into the discovery now, on pages 330 to 336, and I'm going to refer to Nicole Kessinger as NK. NK states that only her father and Chris knew about their affair. This is proven to be a lie. On pages 633 through 636, you'll see her texts between NK and her friend Charlotte discussing in salacious detail all about not only their relationship with her married lover Chris, but detailed accounts of sexual acts between them and her future plans with him. Again, on page 505, she states that her friends didn't know about their affair because he was with two women. Once again, another proven lie. Refer to pages 633 through 637. In the same pages, 330 through 336, she states that she didn't know Shanann was pregnant and only found out the day of the interview with CBI. And she found that out by watching news reports. Well, this is also a proven lie, as Tammy Lee confronted Chris at Dodge in February and informed him that NK definitely knew about the pregnancy because her computer searches and the records from that proved that Nicole viewed Shanann's "Oops, we did it again" video reveal to Chris that was on Shanann's Facebook public post. That video was posted before NK and Chris claimed to have started their affair. So that proves that Nicole Kessinger, NK, knew Shanann was pregnant before she ever even started her affair with him. Tammy also stated that NK had Googled Shanann and Chris much earlier, almost a year earlier than the relationship had begun. Now, they did admit that they were flirting then, but a year before. And some people had reported that that was a typo, but the DA said, no, that was not a typo. That Google search went that far back. He told Tammy that maybe she knew about it when Tammy said, well, she knew about this. She searched Shanann. She was on her Facebook page. She had to have seen that. And then Chris said, well, maybe she knew about it, but she blocked it out of her mind. I don't think so. She was okay. So then she was asked about a call. Nicole Kessinger, NK, was asked about a call that she and Chris had for 111 minutes between the hours of 9 and 11 p.m. on August 12th. This is the night prior to the murders. It might have been the night of the murders of the girls, but definitely the night before for Shanann and Nico. She claims she cannot remember what they discussed at all in that conversation, except that he was going to report to the oil field instead of the office in the morning because there was a valve that had a release. This is found on page 550. I speculate that's a lie. I cannot prove it, but it's very, very hard to believe that just mere hours before your lover, your married lover, murders his entire family, you spoke to him for over an hour and a half, but you can't remember one thing you talked about except where he was going to report the next morning, which coincidentally is the drop-off murder site. So during the same interview on page 505, NK claims Chris informed her that Shanann left her wedding ring and she told him to pawn it. Now she states he asked her how much did she think it was worth. I speculate that's a lie. Why would Chris ask her? Had she seen the ring, and if so, when? Also, didn't he buy the ring? Let's say he didn't. Let's say Shanann bought her own ring, which we don't know. Surely Chris would have had some ballpark figure regarding that purchase. It makes no sense for him to ask her. I believe this is a lie to cover the fact that she told him to pawn it, and CBI had that information provided to them by Chris himself, stating that she told him to do that. She knew that fact before ever going into that interview. She knew that Chris already told them, and that they had those texts where she said pawn it, where she told him to pawn it. So she already knew that. She was just covering her butt. Yeah. So anyways, he then said that he'll have it appraised. He just told her he'd have it appraised. She didn't say have it appraised. He said, oh, it's worth something. I'll go have it appraised. She also states on page 509 that Chris was more into her than she was into him. Yeah, I call that a lie too. He said during his interview at Dodge that NK was bipolar and that he had to sometimes talk her off the ledge, and provided an example. He talked about her becoming furious because he returned to his home on the 4th of July, and that she ended up coming over to his and Shanann's house that day because she was still so upset that he had left her apartment. On page 1934, NK searches and deletes, and this is the exact quote. This is what she typed in. Can cops trace text messages? And how long do phone companies keep text messages? She then searches Shanann Watts for quite a while. Finally, she searches Amber Frey book deals. And then, did people hate Amber Frey? Amber Frey, of course, is Scott Peterson's mistress. Chris and Shanann's security system reflect two alerts for doors opening August 13, 2018. The morning he loaded the truck in the driveway was one for the garage door opening, and the other was for the basement door, both at 5:27. Chris was confronted with that fact during his interview at Dodge in February. Now, two doors are being opened at the same time, one in the basement and one at the garage. This is the same morning that he backed the truck into the driveway and he was loading the truck up. So he was confronted with the fact during this interview at Dodge in February. He says he knows he made his lunch and he packed and loaded his work truck, but can't remember if he worked out in the basement that morning or not. Now, I call BS on that first. It's impossible for one person to be able to open the basement door and the garage door simultaneously, as their home did not have remote access to both doors. Also, does he really believe that Coder and Tammy are buying that he would work out that same morning before he drags his dead wife to the truck with his daughters in tow, as he claimed during the interview? His timeline wouldn't allow for it anyway. I believe he's covering for someone else that was in the house at the time that needed to exit the house without being captured on the neighbor's video camera that Chris knew existed. Chris even looked at that camera that morning while walking around the front of his truck to the garage. There were no video cameras at the back of the house, just empty lots in a parking lot behind their house. Within 20 minutes of the basement door alerting through the Vivint system at the Watts home, approximately at 6:15, Nicole's phone pinged from the Frederick phone tower. That's Chris and Shanann's phone tower, closest to their home, while she placed a call to her friend Jim. Now, her apartment is miles away from Frederick, and she would most certainly connect with one of the dozens of towers closer to her town, or one of the several dozens of towers in between her town and Frederick. Nicole Kessinger also texted Chris on August 12th. Now, this is really interesting to me. This is the afternoon prior to the murders. This is after he got home from taking Bella and Celeste to that birthday party. And she requested the lyrics to the Metallica song Battery. Now, battery is not only a term used to refer to physical harm, obviously, assault and battery, but it's also the terminology for an oil battery. And that's the industry term, not oil tanks or oil tank site. It's called an oil battery. And, she's in that industry, so she knows that. And that's where the bodies were dumped. So I find this very coincidental. And did she think that he was going to maybe kill them in another way than he did, or that she and he were going to do it differently earlier? Had they discussed that? But just the idea that she requested those lyrics that same day is really telling to me. All right. Now on page 615, NK is confronted about some of her lies that she has told during earlier interviews. Later, after her phone was unlocked and searched by law enforcement, she admits that on August 7th, she sent Charlotte pictures of Chris and discussed that he was married with kids and wanted to have a guy with no kids. On August 22nd, NK asked Charlotte to remove all the pictures of her from her social media. On page 617 of Discovery, NK states that she and Chris had a phone conversation before he left for North Carolina and had discussed the fact that while he joined Shanann for that last week of her North Carolina trip, that she wanted to be sure that he had done everything he could do to repair their marriage before she entered his life. And she tried to convince him to fix his marriage. These are her words. Yeah, I call BS on that too. She sent him nudes, semi-nudes, called and texted him continuously during his trip to North Carolina, so much that Shanann and the Ruseks noticed that phone activity and commented on it. So, yeah, she wasn't giving him work on your marriage and then sending him all that stuff. So that's not true. That's what she said. He never corroborated that either, that's what she told him. He said she was texting and calling him. And that was during one of those when she was throwing a fit, and he told her that he decided he was going to be with her. That was determined then. All right. So the facts were discovered after Chris's phone. Some of these were deciphered and discovered after Chris's phone was searched, and they found that hidden calculator app, and that's where all those pictures were. And the texts are found on page 615 through 619. Those are the texts between NK and Chris when he was in North Carolina. On page 947, NK told CW, Chris, said Chris asked her if he could talk to the media, if he should. Can I talk to them? Do you think I should talk to them? And she told him initially, no, I don't think you should. But then later said maybe she should tell him to ask Shanann to bring back his kids. During the meeting with Nicole conducted on August 23rd, this is Nicole Kessinger, CBI victim advocate Hazel Hecker spoke with NK for a short period of time. After the conversation, NK inquired with agent Kevin Kovac about how to change her name. He gave her cursory information on how to do so. NK apologized for deleting the text messages and phone logs between she and Watts. Agent Kovac spoke with her about those deleted messages and told her that there were no criminal charges against her at that time. Agent Kovac spoke with NK about those text message conversations that she had with Charlotte Nelson, which she denied during an earlier interview. He specifically asked what she meant by Chris's children making her feel uncomfortable. NK said, well, she just wanted her own family. That whole thing about the first. She wanted the first of this and the first of that. So, then we get on into this shadow theory, which changed his entire story in February. Now, that shadow theory was created on YouTube by a channel creator, and it caught virtual fire and then was repeated. And the video was altered, showing two shadows by looping during editing. It was slowed down, then it was enhanced. There's no evidence that law enforcement finds this theory credible, despite Chris's interview in February. Coder even told Chris he believes those girls were taken out of that house dead, and that they were killed before Shanann ever came home. That's what he believes. That's what the record states, despite what Chris says. Okay, so there's no evidence that law enforcement finds that credible at all. The last story, and And he even admits that his family told him about the theory and that he took the girls alive. That's what everyone was saying. So once again, the case remains, the findings remain and do not reflect his latest version of events. The legal file still remains as it was initially. And that's the original file. And that all the victims were murdered at the Watts home. Whether or not Nico was born at home or in the grave, they speculate he was born in the grave. But that has not, that's in some of the autopsy reports. But Shanann and the two girls were killed in the home, and that's what the official report still states. And Chris can remember that morning. Now Chris can remember packing his cottage cheese, his water bottle, and all the other various non-consequential items, but he didn't put shoes on those girls. He didn't change Cece's diaper. He didn't load the 2 car seats from the garage floor into the truck, and the girls supposedly stood at that garage door opening, lined up, while he carried one girl, put her in the truck, then came back for the other girl, and she just stood there waiting for him to come back and pick her up and then carry her and put her in the truck too. Yeah, these are girls that were reported to run out into the street. Whenever that garage door or front door was open, they would just dart right, as toddlers do. They'd run out in the street and run out in the yard. But they stood there, you know, like soldiers in line. Yeah. Yeah, they drove for 45 minutes to the Survey site, while in his words, they laid on each other's laps and held each other. And this is all during this latest confession that he said that this is what happened. So this is not in discovery. This is the version that he gave in Dodge. So he said that they laid in each other's arms and they held each other, neither having a snack or a drink or freaking out as their mother lay on the floorboards, covered at each end with a plastic bag. You know, and those totes back there, where were their legs? So, and I don't, that's impossible. And these are girls that had a ritual every morning of breakfasts and drinks at the table, you know. He claims he had no plans to kill the girls, but he planned on working all day. Now, he planned his lunch. He brought his water and his lunch pail and a change of clothes for himself, and he kept another change in the truck because, you know, one time he got some of that crude oil on his clothing or the vapors, and had a headache for a couple of weeks. So all that was planned out. But he didn't have anything for the girls, though. What did he plan to do? Just leave the girls in the truck all day in the heat, not expect them to climb out of the truck in front of his coworkers? He obviously didn't plan on dropping them off anywhere. He had nowhere to do so. If he didn't plan on killing them, then he would have packed their lunches, their drinks, their backpacks with the EpiPen for Cece, afternoon snacks, a change of clothes, as he normally did every single morning of their entire lives, and he would have dropped them off at school. But he didn't. He brought these girls in their pajamas, Cece in a dirty diaper, no shoes on, not fed, nothing to drink, and put them in that truck and drove them out there for 45 minutes. Yeah, I don't buy this story. I believe the girls were killed the night before, and he was anxious to dispose of their bodies in the oil tanks as soon as he killed Shanann. He needed to dig the grave as soon as he would be pressed for time in the morning, not being sure exactly what time his coworkers would arrive. He would like us to believe that he dug her grave yards from the parking lot and carried her all the way over to the grave by himself while the girls sat patiently in the car. Yet he admitted in the first interview that he had to drag Shanann down the steps at home as he couldn't lift her. Where were the drag marks in the sand or the tire marks if he drove right up to the gravesite? Well, there weren't any, and he said he left the car on the parking lot while he dug the grave and then buried Shanann and Nico. Then comes back and kills Cece and Bella, and Bella asks the question, phrased like he himself phrases a statement. During his last confession, he said, "I did the exact same thing to Shanann that she did to the girls." He said, Bella asked, "Is the exact same thing going to happen to Cece? It's going to happen to me." That is extremely contrived. And if he couldn't lift his wife up from the steps going down to the front. Couldn't even lift her out of the garage and put her in the back seat. He had to drag her. He could walk across sand. Have you ever walked on sand? In those work boots, and he was carrying her? He would have had to drag her. This is all a lie. All right. So, yeah, that's completely contrived. And then when asked why he put the girls in separate tanks, he didn't have an answer. I believe the answer is because two people carried them up the stairs and put them in the tanks simultaneously. That makes sense. You don't just, click something and the thing opens. You have to use a wrench to open that. So both of those were opened. And that was so they both could be disposed simultaneously. He didn't have an answer for that either. I'm also interested in those nitrile gloves as well. The one that they found on top of the refrigerator. They're the dark rubber gloves you buy in a box. And then the other one was found between the two king-size pillows in the master bedroom. It's very odd. They're bought in boxes and they're bought in sizes. So what size were they? Was the box purchased on one of the trips that he and Nicole took to Home Depot? Or did Shanann have a box that she was using gloves from for home cleaning or maybe bathing Dieter? Has law enforcement located that box and checked the purchases made by CW and NK during those 6 weeks? And if they can't find a box and those are just a separate pair of gloves, there's premeditation once again. This was not a rage. It was premeditated. You had those gloves ahead of time. So the reason that he said that he had sex with Shanann was an attempt to exonerate NK. So he feels that exonerates her, right? Because after all, he wouldn't be engaging with sex if NK was there. Because after all, she told him, do not have sex with her anymore. And she texted him that when he was in North Carolina. And you can find those on that same page. So that's a lie. He said that to exonerate NK. And they found no forensic proof that he had sex with her. They don't, Tammy was suspicious of that as well. So I think he expected to access Shanann's phone also in an attempt to delete the text messages between the two of them, between Chris and Shanann. And but he did from his own phone. He deleted quite a few of those texts, but he wasn't able to get into her phone. So, because she had changed the password, but Nicole Atkinson guessed that she was the real hero that day. She guessed it and guessed that it was Nico's date of birth, expected date of birth. And then Nicole's teenage son, Nicole Atkinson's teenage son, found the cell phone that was hidden and shoved down in between the upstairs cushions. There was only one. This is the other thing. People speculate, well, he got on top of her, he was straddling her. He said he was straddling her, he was holding her down. There would be bruises on her arms if he had his knees, or you have to take two hands to strangle someone. Even if he was doing it with one hand, he would still need both hands to hold her down. It's just human nature to fight. And there are no bruises on her, except on the bruise over the right carotid artery on her neck. There were no signs of restraints on her arms, legs, body, or anywhere. I believe she passed out while having her right carotid artery blocked until she did pass out. It was held and compressed until she passed out and eventually died. I believe she was asleep and ambushed from behind by spooning her and holding her. But somebody got behind her and put both of their arms around her her upper arms, and just held her body. That's why the weight distribution would have been laid out further across. There wouldn't be points of, like a point where you're holding your hand in and making an impression to make a bruise. They were holding her, squeezing her body. And then her legs as well, wrapping, you know how you spoon someone and you wrap your legs around their legs. That's how she was held, I believe. That's my theory, was held from behind while someone else was applying that pressure to the carotid artery. Might have been doing both on both sides, but the right carotid artery was getting the most pressure because she probably was laying on that side. All right, so I believe he either killed the girls right afterwards and then drove 45 minutes out and 45 minutes back, giving him time to prepare for work, and then loaded Shanann in the truck and then headed to Survey to bury her. Or he killed them earlier and they were taken to the tanks prior to midnight when Shanann arrived home. She was supposed to arrive at midnight, but she didn't. But they were taken there before midnight. He didn't know that the flight had been delayed. So it was one of the two, I believe, and I'm not certain. He convinced her to let them sleep, and this would be if she came home and he killed the kids afterwards. That she would have come home, she didn't feel well, she was exhausted, and he may have convinced her to let them sleep, and she might have agreed, and then just went ahead and went into bed without even washing her face, which was really uncharacteristic for her because she had a nightly facial ritual, which was captured in Facebook on a Facebook video on her channel. Either way, the bottom line is that Chris confessed and his case is closed. Was closed until today. Whether he can get that opened or not, I don't know. Tammy told him at Dodge that the murder case is not closed. They told him that they were told to ask him about Nicole Kessinger. And there's a reason for this. Her lies are right here in the discovery and subsequent findings. Without concrete evidence, law enforcement cannot arrest her, as the DA cannot make a prosecutable case. They are sitting on information that we are not privy to and may be building a case as we speak. It's not known. Remember, her September interview has not ever been made public, nor have a vast majority of her texts that were retrieved been made public. So, I, like many others, pray for justice in this case. And if NK is involved, I pray that she's arrested and convicted. If she isn't, and she's just the motivating force, then so be it. But if I were her, I would submit to a polygraph test. With as much speculation that's surrounding her, and she has to go to the lengths to change her name, relocate, go into hiding, why isn't she doing public interviews and begging for a polygraph to prove her innocence? I would. I would want to prove my innocence, such a heinous and horrific crime. If I had nothing to do with it, I would be shouting that from the mountaintops. And of course she's not. So you need to ask yourself that. If you don't think she's involved, you think she just was the manipulator, that's one thing. She can admit to being the manipulator. She still would not be held culpable in that. But if they felt that she had something to do with it and she needed to exonerate herself, well, then she needs to do that. She hasn't done that. So, that's really interesting. So I just pray that soon, everything's going to be uncovered, and hopefully this time Chris will, tell the truth. And maybe he is a little upset that Nikki isn't reaching out to him. Maybe he has inside information because after all, she and Ronnie had talked. Maybe they told her, hey, Nikki isn't in your corner. You need to still try to get out of there, but Nikki's moved on. Maybe he knows that, and he's pissed off, and he's just trying to tap her on the shoulder. Maybe it's a little tap on the shoulder to her. We have to wait and see what transpires, but like many of us have speculated, this case is far from over. And as much as other people want to say it is, it's not. And as much as other people want to say she has nothing to do with this case, NK doesn't, she does. That's my opinion, and we will wait and see what happens. If you have any things that you want to say or discuss, please leave them in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if you're interested. Just don't do any victim bashing and bullying, because I think that I have deleted more negative comments or victim bashing or bullying than comments remain on that last video, as the video of why it's not over. So just, try to be respectful. We all have our own opinions, and I gave you facts from Discovery and my opinion and speculations regarding those. I didn't take any videos and loop them and try to say that certain things happened that didn't, and I'm not doing any paranormal anything, So, and I'm not monetized either, so I'm not doing it for any type of monetary gain. I want justice for Shanann and her children and her family and those beautiful girls in Nico. And hashtag Shine Like Shanann. All right, until next time, God bless.